Welcome to episode 3 of Untying Knots. I'm Lyndon,
And I'm Angelica.
and we are here to talk about why divorce is a good thing today.
Yes, we want to switch their narrative between the bad and the good. But if divorce is so bad, why are we doing so good?
You look like you up,
I am.
way up.
I am.
I love that. I love that. Yes, so much is set on divorce being a negative thing, divorce being a failure, but really, it doesn't have to be that if you decide differently.
Not at all.
And speaking of divorce, let's talk about J-Lo, right?
Yes.
Hot news in the
Yes.
culture. She just had her 5th divorce.
Fifth.
That's crazy. What do you think about that?
Look, you just keep trying. It doesn't work out onto the next. I mean,
she the
don't give up, girl.
She the GOAT of divorces.
She really is.
Tom Brady level.
She's got it down to a science.
Do you think that's the new norm?
I think so.
What do you explain?
So I think you're just going to find somebody that you're going to spend a couple of years with, married, and then if it doesn't work, you just move on to the next.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the idea that you're going to be married to somebody forever and ever till death do you part isn't as realistic for our generation. And I think what is more common in our generation is that we're with people for seasons. For
exactly.
years. And then we love them. They do our part in life. Yeah.
Just like the NFL.
Yeah, it's just like a lease.
Right.
You know what I mean? We don't buy people, we lease people.
You lease people and then on to the next.
So I kind of think that's where people really are.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Why not? But let's try it out.
5 marriages. I don't have 5 marriages in me.
Me neither.
I would never go five times.
And I'm sure they all had prenups. Probably like the older ones, the beginner ones where she was just coming up. Probably didn't. But now for sure.
I'm sure she did from the beginning because she already had motion.
Right.
So there's no way she didn't have a prenup. But man, shout out to Ben Affleck, bro. It's going to be good. Don't worry. There's more shorties out there.
For sure. He's 2 for 2 on the Jennifers.
He is. Hey, you gotta be careful with them Jennifers.
Right.
He did. He went from Jennifer to Jenny, got the same result.
Right.
Sorry, my boy. Hey, that's still a dub for you, though. It's still a dub. Look, in this episode, we're turning the traditional narrative on its head. You know, while so many people think that divorce is a real life failure, we really want to shift the perspective and get you to think differently about divorce from the sense that it's not a bad thing. This is something that I should do. This is something that's good for my family. This is something that's good for the kids.
Yes.
This is what's best for me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? When I was going through my divorce, I remember at the time like talking to my attorney and I was like so down. Like I was so depressed. I was so hurt, so deflated. And I remember she told me, she's like, I know it doesn't seem like it, but it's going to get better. And in the moment, I was like, man, I ain't trying to hear that right now. Like, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But she was right.
She was.
She was like, it did get better. And not just like the healing and the hurt, but like life got better. My quality of life, who I am as a person improved. The circumstance with my kids, like all those things became better. And I shifted my mindset from the fact that my ex-wife did wrong to me to the fact that this was my ex-wife's last act of love towards me.
Yes.
So
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
By the way.
I believe like she actually loved me so much to let me go to be a better person.
Right. And at the moment, it didn't feel like that.
No.
But there's a big shift between we to me.
Yeah.
A big one.
Talk about that.
So you go from being a partnership, right? And you have 2 people collaborating in a life and raising children and making money and raising a household. And then you go from we to me. So I remember thinking, whenever he left, I started thinking, I've been doing everything on my own because he was so absent all the time.
Okay.
And so then I started thinking, like, I'm going to be okay because I got this.
Yeah.
Like, I totally got this.
Yeah.
But then I started realizing how, there's a difference between being lonely and being alone.
For sure.
I loved being alone. Like, whenever he was gone, I loved it. I was like, there was no screaming. There was no fighting. There was just peace. Because we weren't going at each other anymore. And then the shift happened when I started realizing I'm going to be good. Like I don't know what you guys did, But we started, which is kind of weird now that I think about it, but it was clutch. So we started living like we were going to be divorced.
Yeah, we did too.
So I would go stay at my mom's house for the weekend. He would stay with the kids in the house by
Yep.
himself, and then we would switch.
Yeah, you start to establish your own
Yes.
weekends before
Right.
you were actually
But
divorced.
that breeded toxicity within the
Really?
household. Yeah. And for you too, we had conversations about when you would go out and you'd come
Yeah,
home.
yeah.
And then the things that my ex said to me, whose dick were you on? I mean, I was like, I wasn't on nobody's dick, but I'm about to be
Not
after.
yet.
Not yet. Like, what? What? Yeah. I mean, it was, yeah.
So I can remember when we were going through our divorce transition, we did the same exact thing, right? We had picked weekends that this was going to be mine, this was going to be hers, and we started to have an interim transition period
Right.
of what it would be like.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that was beneficial for you guys or not really?
I'm going to say yes, because in the beginning it was treacherous because we were trying to get into the groove of it. But I think it was needed for the kids.
Yeah.
Because we were now shifting to a different dynamic and parents were no longer going to be together.
Yeah, I didn't want to just like one day we're married and we're a family doing the norm. And then the next day I had to move out and the kids are like, what happened? I wanted everybody to have like a transition period where we were adjusting together. Yeah. So there's a lot of reasons why divorce is a good thing, right? We came up with like 5 basic ones, right? You know, detaching yourself from a toxic relationship is one.
Yes.
Improving your financial and professional career opportunities is another one.
For sure.
Your overall
100%.
health is another one.
God, yes.
Another one is your life post-divorce for the kids.
Right.
Right? Removing them from that structure. So we want to get into these different topics and explore why these were beneficial to everyone and why they were helpful to us to really shift the thinking.
Definitely.
Right? So let's talk about escaping toxic relationships. Of course, we know about your high-profile divorce.
Right.
And why that was toxic.
That asshole.
But what do you imagine life would be like if you were still married in that type of relationship, right? The lies, the betrayal, the mistrust. Because I want you to explain this too about how he was expecting you to go through the divorce as a formality.
Yes.
But to stay together. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
And what do you think life would be like if you remained in that toxic relationship?
Yes. So after the 7-week investigation, this is all going to be in book 2. So this is an exclusive here. So after the 7-week investigation, they said, all right, you weren't involved. You have 2 choices. You either get blacklisted and you're done with the Department of Defense, or you have to disassociate yourself and divorce him and his entire family. Disassociate yourself from the family. So I said, where do I sign? I had already made my decision that I was going to leave. So for me, I had to divorce him in order to keep my career. That literally was, that was it.
Did it ever cross your mind that maybe he was worth it? That maybe he was worth the sacrifice of your career? Did that ever cross your mind?
Hell no. No. No, because he was selfish. He was selfish in his pick of me, and he was selfish in his execution of the marriage, and he was also selfish in his delivery, because he literally thought that he's like, all right, we can divorce as a formality, but we'll still stay together. Like, he legit thought that it wasn't a big deal, that we were still going to stay together. And I'm like, this is a huge deal.
Right.
Because if the tables would have been turned, he wouldn't have survived it. There's no way.
And so the expectation was for you to go through the divorce proceeding.
But stay together.
But we're still going to do this together.
Yeah.
How different do you think your life would be?
So the way I explain it is I was a diluted version of myself in that marriage. Because whenever you join yourself with a partner who's really holding you back, then you dilute yourself, your personality, your being, your soul, everything that you are is diluted down to this relationship. So like I like to say it is, I was in the wrong soil. I had no ability to thrive or grow, because as soon as I left the marriage, it's like my life totally transformed, like literally transformed.
You know, the thing I always think about in relationships, people say like, you have to compromise yourself for it to work. But I actually think the opposite is actually true, because a lot of times you get in relationships and you do have to change parts of who you actually are, what you like to do, some of your typical patterns of behavior or how you dress, whatever it may be,
Yes.
to appease your spouse, and you
Yes.
begin to lose yourself over time.
Yes.
And you don't
Absolutely.
become more of yourself. You compromise yourself to make it work.
Right.
Right. But don't you think that maybe a healthy relationship is not one where you compromise who you are, but it actually nourishes and flourishes who
Who
you are
you are.
meant to be?
Yes.
So you're
Yes.
not having to throw away parts of you. You actually are bringing out more of you in a healthy relationship.
Yes.
So if you're,
Ideally.
yeah, ideally, I feel like if your relationship is forcing you to compromise parts of who you actually are as an individual, I'm not saying like your mistakes or your character flaws where we all need to grow. I'm talking about like just who you are as a person,
As a
your
person. For
individuality.
sure. Yeah.
If
100%.
your relationship is causing you to compromise your individuality, you are probably better off without that relationship and being in a space where you can grow and flourish to who you are meant to be.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. So in our relationship, the double standard, so the toxicities in my relationship were very alive and just prominent. For us, it was the double standard. He could do things, but I couldn't. He can go on boys trips and I couldn't. He could he had this weird rule about spending more than $400. If I was going to spend more than $400, I had to let him know what the expenditure was going to be before I did it. But he would come home with like Vera Wang suits, like $1,200
But you were
suits.
working, right? So
I
even if
was
it was your
working.
own money, you had to like
Yes,
check in for a
right,
$500
right.
purchase.
There was a point in time where I was bringing in about 10 to 20K a week. And I remember I went and I bought myself a Gucci bag and he lost it. He went crazy. The thing was only like $1,000. I was like, bro, I just brought 20 grand home. And he's like, no, but it wasn't the money. It was the power of me not telling him ahead of time. And then he would come home with iPads and AirPods and Vera Wangs. And I'm like, bro, does this rule not apply to you? And he's like, well, I make a lot more money than you do. So no, it does not. So when a woman goes through things like that, you start to resent the relationship and you start to resent that person, and it just starts tacking up even more.
Yeah, we had a similar setup in our marriage too, is that we had a certain threshold, anything over, I think it was like $300 or $400 as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy anything you want under that. Anything over require you to contact the other person and get approval. Well, I felt like my ex-wife was telling me no on shoes that I wanted. And then I started thinking like, yo, you that nigga, Lyndon. Like, you make the money, bro. Like, you gonna let her tell you what you can't buy with your money that you working for? Like, who is she? Get the Yeezys, bro. Get the Yeezys. And I'm buying the kicks. I'm not even asking her. Because in my mind, like, I'm working for this. So kind of like what he felt like is like, well, I'm the man. I'm running this show.
Yeah, the double standard was probably,
you need to follow the rules, but it doesn't apply to me.
And I hated that because I grew up in a household where my brother got to stay out late. My brother my brother got all the good stuff, but us as girls couldn't stay out late, couldn't have boys in the house, nothing like that. It was always very, very strict. But I think with that, there was so much more. Like he would go on trips and say it was business. Mm-hmm. He would spend crazy money out on lunches, and then he would be like, oh, I took a client out. But then it was like, I couldn't go to brunch with my girls. I couldn't go on girls' trips. Like none of that stuff. Like I was always at home with the kids and he was just doing whatever he wanted. So I think over time, all those things start adding up and then resentment builds and builds and builds. And I think that's why us women check out way before men check out.
I think that was my toxicity, that I was one of them that I was spewing into my marriage. And I'm glad that my ex-wife doesn't have to be subjected to that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I could even look back and say, you know what? I did have that same mindset, and I did have this idea like, well, the rule applies to you, because I would be mad if she spent $500 on something, because I'm like, well, who gave you that?
But she wasn't bringing money
permission?
In, right?
She wasn't. She was a stay-at-home mom.
So it was totally different.
But it's like, I would get mad if she checked me about a $600 pair of shoes that I was buying. So once again, like, the whole idea of freeing her from that toxicity. You know what I mean? That I was spewing
it's
onto
actually
her,
a gift.
that was a good thing for her to leave that marriage, that part of me.
For sure.
That wasn't bringing out the best in her in that way.
Not at all. And then you get to a point where you're just fighting about everything. You're 1,000%. Fighting about The garbage, I mean, the dumbest shit. The garbage, who didn't forgot to put the shoes out or whatever. The kids aren't ready for bed, whatever it was. But I think you just get to a point where everything is so toxic that you just can't even be in each other's presence anymore.
We got stuck in quarantine. Quarantine is what did us in.
Us too.
Like, we already had issues. And then in March 2020, when we were forced to, like, nobody could leave the house, that's when it just got, like, hella toxic. Like, really bad.
Yeah.
And that's when she was like, I had enough. And she was like, yep, send that boy off. So escaping the toxic relationship is one benefit of why you should get a divorce. Identifying the toxicities in your marriage, the ones you're contributing and the ones that you're receiving, right? And think about how, like, you should move on from that and put yourself in places where you're growing and flourishing.
Right.
But let's also talk about the benefit of growing as an individual, right? So you left that toxic relationship, but a lot of people think that if I get divorced, it's the end of their self.
It's actually really, the beginning.
It's the beginning
of you,
of who you are.
Yeah.
Let's
you
talk
get spit
about
out
that.
the other end. So for me, I was competing during my divorce, and I felt like I poured myself into my competition, my fitness competition.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to deal with the hurt of the divorce. So I had a distraction. So instead of like dick and this and that, mine was I was pouring myself into this competition. I moved out of the house in March and I competed July of 21. And I remember I was just obsessed with like my meal prep and my workouts and everything. But I started to shift. Not only was my body changing because I was, in the midst of doing the competition, but then I started to realize, oh my God, who am I? Like, what do I like to eat? What kind of music do I like to watch? Like, I went through that kind of revelation as to, did I really lose myself in this marriage? Like, what was I wearing half the time? Or what was I eating half the time? Like, a lot of the stuff that I was doing wasn't even me anymore, if that makes any sense. Like, I had lost myself completely.
Yeah.
At some point, my best friend from Chicago, Sophie, she said, you're a Betty Crocker. She's like, you always would wear heels. You always were very sexy. Like, my aura, my energy's always been very sexy. But when I married, it was like diluted to, you're like this woman that doesn't look at nobody. It was like, he didn't want to take me out. And for him, I feel like he saw me as a vessel of giving him children because he wanted to just keep having kids.
Yeah.
Because when I was having kids, I was overweight, breastfeeding, and in the house.
And under his control.
Yeah. Because I couldn't technically be out working.
Yeah. Or in the streets.
Right. Not that I ever was, because I couldn't even go out to like brunch with my girlfriends.
That's true too.
In fact, I remember he's like, why don't you just invite them over and we'll have somebody cook for them? He didn't even want me out having brunch, like in an outside place. He was like, just bring them here. We have this mansion. We have this beautiful house. Just bring them here. So.
Yeah. See, but you were also a cartel wife and didn't know it. So, he knew some things that he was keeping from you, that's kind of crazy. But, a lot of times when people are married, their identity becomes wrapped up in the idea of being husband or wife.
Oh, my God. Yes.
Right. And so they can't think of themselves apart from the title or the position of husband or wife. And they lose themselves in that. And so to dissolve the marriage and dissolve the relationship, they don't even know who they are because everything about them is wrapped up
You become
in that relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
100%. And then I also remembered, I don't know how it was with you and your wife, but there was competition between us. And I think it's because I remember one year I made like 99.9 thousand. And he was like, you didn't make it to the 6 figures. And he just laughed. And he was
Not your husband shitting on you.
Right. And I was like, I just had a baby this year. And I was like off by like $100 or something. And he's like, we'll give it to you. We'll give it to you. And that would break me down. Like, it was a competition. That's why I believe it was more transactional, because it got to a point where it was very competition based. And it was like, who's going to bring in the most money? And I'm like, obviously you are. But it was almost like he was just breaking me down. And then he would gaslight me like crazy and be like, you're so sensitive. You're so dramatic, all that type of stuff. When I would say, hey, you're hurting my feelings, he's like, you're so dramatic. and just like brush it. Like, stop it.
Did you feel like you had to find yourself after you escaped that relationship? Like that,
Yeah.
like a self-discovery?
Yeah. I mean, in every way, shape, and form. Sexually, emotionally, spiritually, I had lost myself in that relationship. I would look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, who am I? Like, that's how lost I was. And I think when I was offered to write my story, that's when I call it like a brain dump, an emotion dump, because I wrote my book in 3 weeks and I just literally unleashed it in my book. And after I wrote my book, I felt like a new person because I had let go of all my trauma that was in my soul and it was now on paper.
That's awesome.
And then I started growing. I started outgrowing him and the relationship.
Yeah.
Because I had now given up everything that I had in my brain and in my heart.
Yeah, I can remember going through mine and like the gym was my coping mechanism at the time.
Yes.
So like I'm the type of person when I'm going through stressful situations, I want to escape, but I had nowhere to go. It's quarantine. I'm going through a divorce. I'm in a new city.
Yeah, so you're also a track star.
Exactly. So I had to go to the gym and I would be in the gym for 2 hours sometimes.
Me too.
Just pouring myself out in emotion and frustration and anger, but it was in the form like lifting weights and reps and sets.
Yeah, physically.
And through that, I started to grow as an individual, like in my physique, but I also was getting out the emotions, especially as a guy, like we don't have healthy outlets.
Right.
And yeah, you know, every guy has people in his corner that he could go talk to or some friend, but it's like, as a guy, you never feel like you actually do. And you just deal with a lot of stuff on your own. And so the gym became my place of pouring out. And I started to see my transformation as a person. And when I saw my physical transformation, I then knew like, yo, you have the capacity to change your whole self, your whole life, your whole being.
I mean, it's really a metamorphosis.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think a lot of people, they see divorce is viewed as a very, very bad and very toxic thing and just so negative. Oh my God. You know, back in the days, our parents, oh, God forbid, we divorced because it was
the worst thing. Yeah.
The worst thing. Right. But with us, and I've seen a lot, you have the glow up.
Yeah.
The glow up was hard for both you and I.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I did my Christmas card, everybody was like, man, look at you with the kids. And because after the year that we divorced, I decided to do a Christmas card. And it was fly, you know, and it was just us three. And everybody was loving it.
That was one with the red outfit.
Yeah. And everybody was like, okay, I see you. And then it ended up being a transition where even though I left this huge, beautiful house and I went into like a 2-bedroom apartment, we were so happy because there was no drama. There was no fighting. There was no turbulence. Everything was so nice. I even remember the kids not even missing their theater or their playroom, all of that. They're like, this is nice because we don't have any fighting.
Yeah. Divorce isn't always bad, but it's definitely hard.
It's definitely hard.
But don't mix bad. Don't mix hard for bad.
Yes.
It's two different things.
It's two different things. It was definitely hard, but it was nice.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I'm going to throw this out there because I tell this to my married friends, my unhappily married friends. When you divorce, you actually have weekends to yourself.
Yeah. Which is another benefit, low key.
Oh my goodness.
And I love my kids with my entire soul.
Me too. But those weekends where you just...
Clutch.
Oh my goodness. If you were married, you wouldn't have that.
Imagine if you were a dad.
Yeah. Oh, even better. We don't have 50-50.
Imagine if you were a dad.
Right. I know, but
extra days.
Listen, the weekends are fine. Like the weekends I don't have my kids, I can sleep in, I can go to the gym for 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever, and do whatever I want without having to worry. Yeah. Right.
And not that we don't desire to be with our kids or anything like that, but when you're in an unhealthy relationship, in a toxic dynamic, and there's no outlet for you to have your individual space, and not only are you dealing with the tough spouse, but then you have to tend to children who are young or nagging and going through kid stuff, you get no days off.
Not at all.
That environment.
I mean, yeah.
None
and then one of the things we got into that we were talking about too was people want to have kids, but they don't want to raise them.
Yeah.
So I felt like my ex wanted to be a dad and quote unquote have children, but I don't think he wanted to raise them. I think that was something that's like, hey, you're going to do this.
I think that's kind of like going back to the J-Lo thing, right? Traditional versus modern.
Yeah.
And I think now in the modern family dynamic, the expectation is that men are co-partners in raising children. But the traditional values are that that's entirely a woman's duty.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah.
so
But there's very active fathers out there.
no, for sure.
Yeah.
That's how I am.
Yeah, that's
Like,
how you are.
I love
Yeah.
being a dad. Like,
Right.
I was up in the middle of the night with her while she breastfed. I had the diaper ready. I'm up every time one of them was crying.
Yeah.
You know, like,
no, not mine.
I'm helping in every way.
Right.
And I love it. But, you know, another way that I grew as a person after my divorce that I didn't inside my marriage was like in my sexuality.
Yes.
Right? So
100%.
we never
For the people in the back.
we never had sex issues in our marriage. That was never a problem for us. But it was very routine. It was very standard. It was like, you know what you're getting every time. You know it's how it's coming to you. There was no exploration. There was no discovery. There was no experimenting.
Isn't that weird?
It was none of that. It was just like, you know.
Get it in, get it
regular,
out.
You know,
yeah.
Our same 4 positions.
Right.
But after our divorce, I was talking to my therapist. We did a session about sexual discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And she challenged me to open myself up to trying new things, even things that I think that I might not like. Right? So I set my boundaries, my parameters.
Of course.
Who I am and what I will and won't do.
Yeah.
But there were certain things sexually that I'd never tried with my wife that I started experimenting with other women.
People. Yeah.
I was like, yo, this is up. This is lit. Like, I'm for it. Like, I didn't even know I like this.
Right.
Like,
listen, I think you being married and being with somebody for that long, you get into a routine of monotony. I'm going to say that. And yeah, for me, it was like, oh my God, I've been with the same person. I mean, I didn't cheat in my marriage. I've been with the same person for 10 years. Like, and it was not fun and it was not exciting. And that was another thing that I felt I was very diluted, is because he would always make me wrong for wanting more of the non-traditional things. So I felt like I was always boxed in, like, you need to, you're a wife. You can't be this like dirty, you know what I mean?
want to be a little slutty with your husband.
Right, but he wasn't having
He wasn't trying to get slutted out.
No, not at all.
That's kind of how we were. Like, I wasn't getting slutted out by my wife. She wasn't letting me slut her out like that.
Yeah.
But
she wasn't letting you? She wasn't open to other things.
Look, I said this before, and like, this is probably an overshare, but like, I had never performed oral sex on a woman until I got married. And it was like a year into the marriage. And I didn't even like it like that. Like, I was just like, oral sex was not a part of our marriage like that.
Yeah.
Like, it was like here or there, licky lick, kissy kiss, but it wasn't
it was like
it wasn't like the shit. You know what I'm saying? It was like, damn.
You weren't getting
in there. It should be on the hub.
Right,
it wasn't like that.
It should be on the hub.
But after divorce?
Yeah. Well, I think you start growing as a person, right? And then I feel like your sexuality is correlated to your spirituality and your self-love.
Yeah.
And because for me, I remember, man, after, this is going to be an overshare, but let's go with it. I remember the first person that I had sex with after my husband, he told me some things that my ex never mentioned. Never.
And you never felt that type of energy
And
before.
I never felt that type of energy. Like, he would say things like, yo, what is it doing down there? Right? And I'm like, what do you mean what's it doing down there? And he's like, this is not normal. Like, women don't pulsate like this.
And
I was like, I thought all women pulsated. Do we not pulsate?
That pulsate.
Yeah.
Pulsate. Okay, okay.
So wait, so now, so let's be real, right?
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Do we need to cut it? So
no. Your DM's about to be stupid.
They already are. Okay, but look, he never shared this information with me. So I thought that this was the norm, right?
Yeah.
But as, I had, obviously had sex with that guy, and he was like, yo, what? I mean, he was saying some things, and I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, this is like, you're a unicorn. Like, this doesn't happen. Like, this is not normal.
Yeah. Once again, compromising
Right.
self, right?
Right.
Sometimes in an unhealthy relationship, you're compromising parts of yourself. Some you're not even aware of. I wasn't even aware that I was really like compromising my sexual self.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wasn't any type of aggression around it. Like she like told me no about stuff, but it was more so it wasn't the discovery of it.
Right.
Like it wasn't there
Right.
or like
Right.
bringing out those parts. You know what I mean? And I never would have known I liked certain things or I'm into certain
Right.
stuff had I remained married.
Right.
I'd
So
still
like,
be like
what's it
doing,
called? It's like fully self-expression, where you
yeah,
could be fully self-expressed. So I remember he would always say things like you're too much, or you're too like sensual or stuff like that.
mm-hmm,
And he never wanted to do anything outside of the box either.
mm-hmm,
And I'm over here like trying to get swings and all types of
yeah,
stuff. And he was like, no, we're not doing that. But then I was like thinking, for 10 years, I was almost somebody who I really wasn't, or I was
yeah,
forced to be somebody who I really wasn't. Does that make sense?
yeah,
And so then I remember in your growth and divorce, you start realizing who you are as a person, as a singular person,
yeah,
and what you want and what you don't want.
yeah,
And there's just a lot of things out there to explore.
yeah.
And besides the sex, you know, it's like, who am I as a
A
person?
person.
Who do I want to become?
Yeah.
Where do I fit in this world?
Why am I like this? You know,
Right.
I really got to understand myself as far as like, why do I think this way? Where do these patterns of behavior come from?
Right.
My flaws, my strengths, like all these things I began to really learn about myself
Right.
because of divorce. And once I began to learn them, I then could grow from them and start
Yeah.
applying certain things or stop doing certain things or put more energy into more positive things.
Right.
You know, like it was like really, I would be a shell of myself if I were still married, and so would my ex-wife.
Yeah. That's exactly
She was still
the perfect way to
I was
describe
holding her
it.
back too.
A
You know, in a
shell.
lot of
Yeah.
ways.
For
A
sure.
shell of myself.
Yeah. And a lot of people, again, when you go get married, you think about the flowers and the teddy bears and all that, but you don't think about the things you really should talk about. You know, like we had that list, you know, needs, wants, expectations,
Mhm.
with finances, with child rearing, with your like everything, right? How you're gonna grow up, how your family has an impact on your relationship, things like
Mhm.
that. You don't talk about these things. And when things really start getting hard, that's when it tests you
Yeah.
to see if you were really compatible to
Yep.
begin with. But even if you were compatible, it's continuous work.
Yep. It
And
is.
some people just give up.
It's hard to stay, it's hard to go.
Right.
Pick your heart.
Right. Pick your heart.
What's best
Yeah.
for you and your family.
Right. And for me, I just felt like my entire life just blew up. Like I remember him being like, yeah, your stupid little book. And then it hit bestseller. And then everything from there just went up. I got blacklisted, but if I didn't get blacklisted, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
We wouldn't be here. If we didn't get divorced, we wouldn't be here.
No, this podcast wouldn't exist.
Wouldn't exist.
You know what I thought about too? If it weren't for our divorce, we wouldn't even be reaching people that we were meant to reach.
Right.
We would be
Right.
trapped in our marriages, and the people we were meant to touch because of a negative experience, we would have never touched them.
Right. And then the other thing too is, I don't want to say that I wasted 10 years of my life. I wasted my 30s with this man, but my 40s are banging.
It's not even a waste. It's not even a waste, right? Like a purpose was being fulfilled. And all those things, positive and negative, had to happen in order for you to enjoy the prosperity that you're now living
Right.
in, the abundance you're now living in. You don't get the good without enduring and overcoming the
Right.
bad and the challenge.
Absolutely.
It's-
And talk about being in such peaceful energy.
Yeah.
Like being single for an extended period of time with no drama. It's
Oh man.
amazing.
It's life changing.
Really. Like
It's
you
so
got
much
no
better.
drama, no tumultuous stuff.
I don't even argue.
No
more.
toxicity.
I haven't
Yeah.
argued with somebody in like years.
Right. It's just, you're just like, you get to this point where you're like, man, this is nice.
This is nice.
This is
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one main reason why people stay in a marriage is because of the kids.
Yes.
And we both have kids. And
We
I
do.
felt like this going through divorce. Like I tried to convince my ex that we needed to stay together for the kids. And I've met couples before who will just like learn how to tolerate each other until they raise their kids. And then the kids are out the house and then they're done with each other.
Yeah.
But let's talk about why it was beneficial for our kids when we got divorced.
Yeah. So I was always affirm. So my parents are still married. Your parents are still married.
Mm-hmm.
My parents still have a beautiful marriage. My dad never raised his voice, never put his hands on my mother, nothing like that. My dad really was probably like the model husband. He was great to my mother. But I remember seeing the kids' face when we would fight, and they would be so scared, and then they would even run into the room because we were screaming so much. And I remember thinking, if I leave and we separate ourselves, they won't be doing that.
Mm.
So physically seeing the kids get up and run to the room
Yeah.
because we were starting to fight,
Yeah.
that was my indication that we needed to part ways.
Yeah.
That this isn't gonna work.
I felt like staying married would do more damage and destruction to our kids than us getting a divorce.
Yes, and
For
it
the same
does.
reason.
Statistically, it does.
Yeah, because my kids, like yours, would see us fight. And, you know, my daughter to this day, she remembers certain fights we had and can tell me detail by detail
Yeah.
what happened. And it kills me that as a parent, like I scarred her memory with violence and hostility and aggression and physical abuse that she
Right.
saw from me and her mom.
But on the flip side of that, she's gonna be like, well, I appreciated that I divorced.
To learn from it, yeah.
Because a lot of families don't.
But had we stayed married, how many more of those fights would she have
And how
saw
much more trauma would that
and
have caused?
experienced?
Yeah,
Exactly.
100%.
Versus now, my daughter will tell you that, no, they don't. My parents don't fight. It's better now.
Yeah, things
I
are
like
cool
it.
now.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sometimes you're meant to be co-parents and not be
Mhm.
married forever and ever.
And that was a little bit awkwardness too. It's like, yo, why are we better as co-parents than we were a husband and wife?
Because you weren't meant to be married
Purpose.
for a long extended period of time.
We weren't meant
Because
to be.
marriage is not a bad thing.
No, it's
Yeah.
not. Marriage is beautiful.
Right.
We just weren't meant to be married a day longer than we were.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And that's cool.
And that's cool. Yeah.
That's cool. And then the day after, we were meant to be co-parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm cool with that too.
Right.
And we found our synergy. But, you know, once again, the idea and the fear of staying in a toxic relationship, a toxic marriage that the kids are living in.
Yeah.
And as a parent, I don't think we always realize how we are impacting our children, both consciously and subconsciously.
Subconsciously. Yeah.
And they're living in these toxic environments of unhealthy marriages for the sake of them.
And
when
then
in turn it's
they
hurting them.
believe that this is the norm.
This is the norm.
Yeah.
And they don't know any different. So now they're preconditioned to dysfunction and toxicity.
Right.
And so what type of person are they going to attach themselves to when it's time for them to marry?
Exactly. So at least, you know, I don't know if you put your kids in therapy. I put mine
Yeah.
in therapy.
My daughter and son. went to
Yeah.
therapy.
And it was such a beautiful thing because the therapist would ask, how do you feel about your parents' divorce?
Mhm.
And then they would say, we actually think it's the best thing for
Mhm.
them. Like
Yeah.
little adults.
And how much better can we parent if we're growing,
Right.
to our last point, and becoming better as a person
Right.
and an individual?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're only as good for your children as you are within yourself.
Within yourself. Yeah.
So if you're in a shit condition, you're not really being a good
Listen,
parent.
divorce was it. It was it.
Yo, I hated it at the time. I always said this. Marriage was the best, worst decision of my life.
Yes.
But divorce
Facts.
was the worst, best thing I ever went through.
Yes. It hurts and you go hailing back in a handbasket, but when you come out, you're like, this was a good idea. And the glow up was
The
hard.
glow up was hard.
Yeah.
You have to be, it's a mindset.
It really
Right?
is.
Because a lot of people come out of divorce and get ruined.
Yes. But if they don't work on
You
themselves.
gotta put the work in.
Right. And also talk about the self-love. The self-love that you get from working on yourself, for yourself, like in yourself is it.
Man, you know, okay, this is one of the things that I did going through that season of my life. My therapist hooked me up with this practice. Every week or every 2 weeks, depending how I want to do it, I would identify 5 different areas of my personal self.
Mhm.
And this is in our Ultimate Glow Up Guide too.
Yes.
So check out our
sure is.
Stand store and get our Ultimate Glow Up Guide if you want to go through this practice yourself and other things we learned in our therapy sessions.
Yes.
But what she would have me do is I would look at 5 parts of self: my physical self, my emotional self, my mental self, my spiritual self, and my
Sexual.
sexual self,
Mhm.
like social sexual. And I would look and see which 1 or 2 areas am I weak in, that I struggle with. And then I would have to do certain exercises for those
Mhm.
weakened areas. So I felt like this week, you know what? this was a tough week emotionally for me. I felt a lot of anger. I wanted to cry. I was sad about things.
Yeah.
And I held it in. Then I would have to schedule a day to actually work on my emotional
On
self.
that part. Yeah.
And she would give me like certain practices to do. And if I said like, you know what, I wasn't too social. I was being lonely. I was just staying in my apartment. I wasn't going out. I wasn't making friends, which she told me, it's good to be alone. It's not good to be alone for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was like in solitude for too long, like isolated. So I would have to work on like, all right, I'm gonna go out by myself, or I'm gonna try to make a friend, or I'm gonna go to a networking event, I'm gonna talk to 4 people. And I would intentionally work on these different areas of myself every single week for months, identifying them, having self-awareness.
Yeah.
And then putting the work in to be like, all right, get a little better. Get a little better.
It's all work, right? It's all what you
Always
put into it. And then the end result is just amazing. You end
Yes.
up being almost like this upgraded version of yourself that you never thought possible.
I would never put that work in on myself in my marriage.
Yes.
It
Thank
was
you.
never going to come out.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It takes work to have a good marriage. It takes work to have a glow up after divorce.
Right. Or have the level of self-love and self-discovery that you did have. We were almost forced to have it.
Yeah.
Which a lot of, like you said, we wouldn't have worked on ourselves within the marriage because we were so conjoined to each other.
Yeah, you weren't forced to.
Right. But then you're severed from your partner, literally severed.
Yeah.
That now you're left with these pieces and you're like, what am I going to do with this?
Literally.
And then when you take those pieces and you work on those pieces, you're a masterpiece.
Yes.
You know, because that's how we came out.
Exactly.
You know,
and
more money, more, I mean, we look better, we feel better. Yeah, everything.
As we got older.
Right. I know.
I don't even feel like I'm in my prime yet.
I know.
Like I feel like the best of me is like
It's
probably
still
like
yet to come.
8 to 10 years away. Like
Yeah.
my peak of life is probably like 10 years away.
And then I think people look at us and they're like, man, look at how good they're doing. But the thing is I always go back to self-love because it's like we poured into ourselves. We no longer had to pour into a broken, diluted, toxic partnership anymore. So all we were left to do is pour into ourselves. And when you do that strategically, emotionally, and you know, with this will to grow, you turn up.
You turn up.
Yeah.
You glow up. That's
you glow
for sure.
up for real.
So to that point, right? So the fourth area of, or fourth benefit of why divorce is good.
Is a good thing.
Is the health benefits.
Yes.
Right. And you said that as you're going through your divorce, you were in the middle of a prep competition.
Competition. Yeah.
And I was saying how like I was hitting the gym like a madman.
Yeah, the gym is like the best outlet. And it still is for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even the physical health benefits that we went through, but what about the mental and emotional health? The anxiety, the depression, the fear, you know what I mean? Like the stress. And how those things for some people may be impacting other elements of their physical
other lives.
condition.
And it seeps into other areas of their lives.
For sure. So, you know, what do you think about like the mental wellness that you experience post-divorce compared to in your marriage?
Oh my goodness. I got to learn so much about myself as a singular person because I no longer had to worry for his emotions anymore. I only had to focus on my emotions and who I was, what I liked, what I didn't like, and what I was willing to accept and what I was willing to not accept. And then switching that into the dating world, it was like, man, I don't want this, and that, but I do want this, and that. So it was really a big revelation to understand yourself emotionally, what you really like. Like I remember one thing that I hated was he never validated my emotions. So when I came out of my marriage, I said, moving forward, I will always validate somebody's emotions. Even if I don't agree with how you're feeling or how I made you feel, I would at least say, I hear you. I understand what you're saying, even though I don't agree with you, instead of saying you're crazy. No, what you're saying is wrong. That invalidation of emotions is really what tears people down. And that's one of the things that I learned was validate my emotions and validate the emotions of the other person.
That's a very thing that I learned after my divorce, was because I was emotionally wrecking my wife with the things that I was saying to her, right? And so I learned this whole concept of building emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And like, how do you care for a woman's feelings? How do you manage and nurture her emotions? How do you validate the expressions
what they're
that she's
feeling,
giving you?
right.
Even though, like you said, you might disagree with it, but I would gaslight her. I would
Mhm.
be very defensive to certain things that she would say. And like I was able to grow emotionally in the area of increasing my emotional IQ as a man. So
Yes.
now going forward in new relationship, I now know how to care for a woman's
And navigate
emotions,
through the emotions.
right?
Yeah.
And that was also like the well-being and the health improvement because I didn't have that or I would not have learned that inside of marriage. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Not just like the feelings that of mine that were hurt, but it's like now I've learned, to your point, is how to be the type of man that can validate her feelings, that can manage her emotions,
Right.
that can be sensitive
Right.
to things where I'm like, oh, that's not a
Yeah.
big deal.
And then another thing that I learned was whenever there was something wrong, I wanted to fix it then and there.
hmm
Instead of walking away,
Yeah, letting it breathe.
letting it breathe, and then coming back. In that marriage, I was like, we're going to talk about this now. We're going to fix this
Same.
now.
Same.
But then now it's like when somebody has an issue, it's like, let's go away from each other
Yeah.
and then come back and reconvene and then talk about what happened.
Yep.
And now it's like, hey, let me give you some time to breathe. We'll talk about it tomorrow in the morning or in a couple hours when you're cool. And then now it's like, now it's part of the process.
Yeah.
Whereas then it was like, we're fixing this now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Which just adds stress to the already stressful situation. You know
Yeah.
what I
Talk
mean?
about being under so much stress, mentally, emotionally, physically, in that type of relationship.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And I feel like a lot of people will stay in relationships for convenience or loneliness or financial reasons. And they might not even be married, but they're going through the same things.
Yeah.
So
that's very true. And once again, like their identity is wrapped up in that relationship. They don't know how they could be better apart from it.
Right.
You know? So last thing is improving finances and career opportunities.
Oh my
right?
God. I'm the poster child for that.
And this is like a huge thing, right? It's like life after divorce. Like you're going to take, as a guy, you're going to take a financial hit. Unless you marry up, you know, and you're winning.
I took a financial hit, but that's because he was doing some shady shit with my LLC. For real.
Hey, it's a win for him. A win for the boys.
Yeah, well, I mean, but if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, for sure.
You know? So for me, it was a 180. I mean, I went from literally got blacklisted by the government to best-selling author, to selling my story to Hollywood, to becoming a motivational speaker, getting published in Forbes, learning digital marketing. I mean, going from one income to like 11 streams of income.
Yeah.
Like, I'm hella up.
Like, seriously. Once again. And the whole time in your marriage.
And I'm by myself.
Your husband was trying to contain that and compress that in you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Saying things like, oh, you didn't even make $100,000.
Right. He was breaking me down, and he never saw me as the business savvy woman that I really am.
Yeah.
And I actually had my own business when I met him. I had my own business. I had started my LLC in 2008. So I think a lot of it is he was trying to condense me or almost like compartmentalize me in this little box of like, she can't be this big star. She can't be this big businesswoman. And as soon as I was unleashed, it was like, no going back.
As a guy, some men are really like that because he doesn't want his wife to outperform or outdo him or out-earn him, really. Because now if your book does well and you out-earn him, then what do you need him for?
Yes.
And now there's a transfer of power and control and leverage. And so a lot of men will speak down on their woman, and instead of empowering her to fulfill her ambitions, he compresses her and compartmentalizes her so that she stays down. So he's always above her.
Above her. Yeah. I mean,
it's a fear thing.
That's crazy. That's a big realization. And so, and then shifting that to dating, right? I have to find somebody that appreciates the hustle, right? And the business savviness of me and everything that I bring. Like, I literally built an empire. Yeah. Literally. Like, I went from this to this. And it's crazy. Like, if we wouldn't have divorced, none of it would have happened. I would have never been on Forbes. I would have never been a motivational speaker on the biggest stages with the biggest names. Like, none of this would have happened.
Yeah, I agree. The same way, like, because I took a financial loss through divorce, I needed to recover and get my gains back so that way I could like maintain a lifestyle.
Right.
And it forced me to start my rental business, Nomad Corporate Living, start doing that. It forced me to start my fitness
Yeah.
and start doing, remember I was doing
Yes.
ab lab stuff, and
Yes.
online challenges and selling meal
It's
plans, like,
wild.
nutrition guides. Like
Yeah.
I started to like just actually like I would have an idea and I would act on it because I had
Yeah.
to. I didn't have a choice. Like there was
You
no
would execute it.
comfort.
Yeah.
Yes. And the more I did that, the more other opportunities start coming.
Yep. And then you start finding yourself and you're like, man, I like
I
this
like this.
version. This
Yeah.
version is a hustler.
I could never do my fitness content creation in my marriage.
She would never allow it.
She didn't even like me posting
Or taking your
a
shirt off
gym
and all
pic or
that.
taking my
Yeah.
shirt off or none of that. Like never liked it. You know what I mean? Which means like
Me neither.
how many
And I'm a
opportunities
very,
would I
very
miss?
like sexual, like, you know, open person.
Well, that's why he didn't like it. You out here showing
Oh,
ass on
well,
the camera.
well, here's the thing. I wasn't out showing ass, but as a competitor, you get up on stage and you show your body. And so when he agreed to allow me to do that, I remember the therapist even said, Ray, did you not allow her to do the competition? And he said, yes. And he's like, this comes with the competition. She's got to wear a thong and get on stage and do posing. And he's like, I know, but guys are looking at my wife. And he's like, and the therapist would always say, but you agreed
Right.
that she was going to do this competition. And this is what comes with the territory.
Yeah.
So
She didn't even want me to do a bodybuilding competition because I would be in certain trunks.
that's crazy.
So you know what I mean? Like
That's see, and it blows my mind, right? Because now in the dating side of it, we see those things ahead of time.
oh yeah.
Like, right? Like when they say, why you spend so much time at the gym? You already know
Yeah.
this ain't gonna work. Why does it matter if I'm spending
I
too
had
much
a
time
girl-
at the
I had
gym?
a girl tell me on a date one time, she was like, I like your outfit, but when I'm with you, you can't be dressing like that.
Oh, with the shirt open,
yeah, I
right?
have my shirt like on, but you know how I like to wear my
Yeah.
shirt. You know what I'm saying?
That's
And so
crazy.
that's what she said. And I was like, yo, the fact that you think you about to change how I dress, because she didn't want like me being out here being sexy or something. I was like,
But
yeah,
that's what she liked about you from the beginning.
that was her insecurity. It's like, well, I like it.
Yeah,
People gonna
this
like
is a
it.
you
I
problem,
can't
not a
de-
me
I
problem.
can't deal with it.
Mhm.
Never talk to her again.
Mm-mm.
Not. I don't even like entertain nothing like that
Mhm.
anymore
Oh yeah,
because of what I went through. Like, if you're not supportive and on board
right.
with what I'm
And
trying to accomplish,
especially now, our lives are out there.
Yeah.
We are here. We're talking about pulsating
it's really
pussy.
it's
Get with it.
if you got a problem with me talking about pussy on my pod,
Right.
that's your problem.
That's your problem. Right.
And literally, that's what it's become. So it's like there's so many opportunities that I feel like people are in bad relationships, unrewarding, unfulfilling relationships that not just are hindering them, but like what they're meant to accomplish and fulfill in life. Like I said, we were meant to touch people with this podcast.
Right. Touch,
it's-
move, and inspire.
Literally.
Right. I mean,
would've
we
been
even
held
had somebody
back
call
by
in.
purpose.
Right. I had a conversation with somebody who said, I can't be fully self-expressed with my partner. And my partner actually doesn't know who I really am because I hide parts of myself in this relationship.
Mm.
And I was like, dang, that sucks. Because us coming out the other end of divorce, even if you break up from a relationship, you learn to be so self-expressed that none of it matters. And it's like, this is it. Either take it or leave it.
Right.
But in relationships, people will hide parts of themselves,
Yeah.
who they are, so to make the relationship work.
Yep.
But in reality, they're both doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's sad
It's
because you
sad.
never get to be your fully self-expressed self.
And being fully self-expressed, you can never go back
Yeah.
to compromising yourself.
You can never.
Could-
Yeah. And you're
No
better
way.
off by yourself.
Literally.
Right.
Literally. I'm telling you, divorce, though it was hard as fuck,
It was needed.
it was very hard. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It was hard. Yeah.
Like literally top 2 most traumatic experiences of my life. Second to police brutality. Like literally. But it was so worth it. Like
Yeah.
so worth it. Like I would give a thank you to my ex-wife right now
Yes.
for what she did as her last act of love of filing for divorce.
Yes.
I appreciate her for that.
Yeah. The perspective of it and the point of view is definitely on point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, if you're in a situation that's not fulfilling who you are as a person and what you're meant to accomplish in life, I would encourage you to highly consider the benefits of who you're meant to be and what you can accomplish apart from a relationship that's not fulfilling you.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about our digital products.
Yes.
So let's spend some time explaining what we have to offer and how these can help people.
So Content Marketing Project just launched, and we actually just have guides. So we really have how to become a speaker, how to become published. What else do we have? We have digital marketing, and what else do we have? Podcasting, how to start a podcast, how to grow it, how to make it be a banger,
how to
like
monetize.
this,
Yeah,
how to monetize.
Sponsorship.
Yeah, sponsorships, all of that good stuff. And then also we talk about affiliate marketing.
Yes, we do.
So affiliate marketing, you mix money in your sleep, literally. Money in your sleep.
To our point, right? Like after divorce, you have to recover financially and you have dreams and ambitions of things you want to do.
Right.
Right. And one of the things that we believe is that everybody should be getting a bag from online.
Right.
And there's a million ways to get it.
You're
already
on online.
Phone.
Yes.
So we put together a guide to give you multiple different strategies of how you can start monetizing your social media, leveraging the content
creation, strategic content creation,
setting up shops,
branding,
podcasts, whatever, to start making money off of your phone. You should be doing it. And then we also have the Glow Up Guide.
The Glow Up, let me tell you, the Glow Up Guide is probably my favorite.
Yes.
Because it's composed of all of the things that we learned in our specific therapy sessions, and we put it together, and it is fire. We sat down and went through it. We're like, man, this is good.
We should do this.
We should do this.
We need to do this.
I had some people say this is probably the best workbook that they have ever done.
Yes. And several of the people who have purchased our Glow Up Guide weren't even divorcees.
No.
They had went through just a breakup.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it was just a self-discovery.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not just meant for people who've gone through divorce. It's meant for people who are trying to discover who they are.
Yeah.
And really do
or who they want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's about, glowing up. You don't have to go through a divorce to glow up.
Right.
So I'm excited about that. Let's talk about what we have coming up in November.
Yeah. So November 16th, we have our exclusive Untying Knots After Dark. So it's going to be nasty. So if you thought the pulsating pussy was too much, this is going to be good stuff.
That was an appetizer.
Yes. We're really going to get down and dirty, candlelight, bring your boo. There's only 60 tickets, so it's very limited. We already have a handful of people that we're bringing in. We're also going to have a 30-minute off-the-chain, high-profile networking.
Yes.
30 minutes, VIP guests. So it's going to be hot. It's going to be here in Houston, November 16th, Saturday, and it's going to be at the Art Gallery.
Yes. Providence 8 Art Studio.
Yes.
So our live shows are an experience.
Yes.
We don't do our conventional podcasting in our live show. It's more of an experience, a collaborative conversation with the audience. And so they're part of what we're talking about. And people are giving their perspectives and letting their voices be heard. And so it's really a fostering of an intimate community around some really good personal topics.
Right. And we're thinking about doing this monthly.
Yeah, we are.
So shout out to Ezra, the owner, because he's on board. He's loving the concept.
That's our boy. So get your tickets now. We have VIP and general admission tickets available. Links are in our bios, our stand store. Go ahead and get those, or Eventbrite. And we cannot wait to see you there. It's going to be a vibe.
Yes, it's going to be a vibe. For sure.
That's an understatement.
It is an understatement.
You know how we get.
Right.
Yo, so, man, I love this conversation so much. Man, if I could tell anybody this, and I want to know your thoughts, but do not look at divorce as a failure.
Not at all.
You did not fail. Don't let anybody tell you that, oh, I was married, I got divorced, and they're like, man, I'm sorry to hear that. It's not, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that's usually what people say.
You didn't fail, you didn't fuck up. You went through an experience that you were meant to go through for that season, and maybe you're just meant to be J-Lo and move on to your next marriage.
Move on to the next. Cool. It doesn't take anything away from you. In fact, it gives you more.
But get better.
Yes.
Don't just go through divorce.
Of course.
And don't come out of it a better person.
Right.
Stun on your ex.
Yes.
We love it. We're Untying Knots. We'll see you on the next episode.
Yes.